All right, we are live with episode 9. I am Anubix. Pass it to my left. Jesse, that's you.
What's up, guys? I'm Jesse, aka Serd, or I now have a YouTube channel, SerdSec. Come watch me build weird AI projects. Yeah, that's me, Michael.
Hello, everybody. My name is Michael, and you can find me on YouTube at Michael Gaucher. And I talk about a range of things, and I look forward to talking with any of you.
So, first thing first, let's see. Give me K3. China did it, man. Iteration. What do you think? What do you guys think?
I think that if I had the cash and the grip, I would try it out wholeheartedly. I think the news reports about it is very optimistic. I like what I hear, and I like the competition. I like competition because we need the tools that we use more often, like Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT. We need those to get better, and I think this is going to encourage them in that direction.
I think the competition is definitely a good thing. The only thing that I don't like about it is it's on Chinese infrastructure. So that means if you do any sort of sensitive work, that's going straight to the Chinese government, probably. But
or you're not doing sensitive work with that model.
you're doing sensitive work that's actually public. But yeah, I think that it's fantastic that we're finally getting competition, because I still believe that the what was it? I'm going brain dead. The Chinese model that come out right after they banned Fable and Mythos was the reason that we eventually got that back. So,
oh, you're talking about GLM?
GLM, that's it. GLM 5.2. That dropped the day after they banned Mythos and Fable. So that's the reason I think that it come back. That's not proven, but I think that the competition is going to make that a lot harder for governments to regulate and gatekeep. So it's good. I think it's healthy. I wish there was more competition in the graphics card market.
Nice. I just dropped something in the chat. It's about EU orders Google to open Android mic camera screen to rival AI assistant. I just came across that one right here.
Oh.
Yeah, European Commission on Thursday ordered Google to give rival AI assistants the same reach into Android that Gemini already has, including camera, microphone, whatever is on screen, a wake word that fires with the display off, and the ability to drive other apps into background by imitating taps and typing.
So when that happens, it looks like a gift to competitors, but it's just like the old Microsoft days where Microsoft opened up stuff, but nobody could ever build a better Microsoft Office than Microsoft. They could never build a better mail server than Microsoft on Windows Server, because Microsoft knows the ground, the landscape. It's the same with Google. Google gonna have their own model on there, Gemma. They just came out with Gemma 4. And, they got their Gemma models on there, right? And the thing about that is Google can learn from these other providers with respect to that. And if there's some success with that, it allows them to proliferate the Android devices more, because they're still in competition with Apple in terms of like the iPhone and everything.
That's what I'm curious about for like the security perspective on that, because it was just a few months ago that the researcher found out that you could do prompt injection through notifications on the Android phones. So like sending it through Slack or Discord, and the AI assistant would read the notification and then execute that. So I'm curious what kind of security holes this might open up.
And isn't it interesting that, that's all a distant memory? That's just like
distant of 2 months ago.
And it's like, hey, I think there was this thing where like they could what's that? Send a silent signal through your mic to actually have the LLM inject that way. But yeah.
Yeah. I would say, what was that?
Iran tracks U.S. military phones.
Yeah. I got stuck. I dropped that in the chat. I was like reading it and I was like, oh, nice. I didn't even see this. In other news, Iran tracks U.S. military phones, crash dealer Mac OS malware, CVD blueprint. In the Netherlands, domestic cyber criminals played a role in recent network intrusion at telecom operator Odido.
And the interesting about that is the Navy SEALs was once renowned for how secure their phones were, and there was always this this practice in government to have better security on phones, but it seems to have gone lax in the last couple of years. And that may not be as catastrophic as some would think. What if this is allowed on some level to actually have another theater of war, right? Let's have a cybersecurity. Let's have a actual cyber war, and see who can crack who and who can shield their defenses best, right? And so my point of view was that we should design our devices so that they are bulletproof and you can't crack them, you can't hack them, and that sort of thing. But I think the mindset has shifted to just say, okay, we're never going to be able to do that. So let's just go all in on just cybersecurity offense.
Okay, I got two things on this. The first one is I love the fact that we were just talking about executing code through notifications. Well, on this same page, AI vulnerabilities allow arbitrary code execution via WhatsApp.
Yep.
But they were actually tracking the U.S. military phones through roaming signal metadata. So they were picking up the roaming.
As they were going from, yeah.
That's actually neat.
Yeah, I mean, when you start like digging into that type stuff, I mean, it's very niche, so to speak, right? Like not everybody and their mother is going to be doing that, right? Like, yeah. So I mean,
that's the stuff that I like. I like researching things that I'll never get to use, but it's neat to know.
Exactly. Let's see. So I did see one other one. Did I drop that one in already? I don't think so. It's another AI one. This is from Dark Reading. This was about the real AI threat is blind trust. Recent attack involving an autonomous AI agent exposing a growing enterprise risk many organizations are not prepared for. AI systems capable of transforming untrusted input into authorized action. No passwords were stolen. No malware was deployed. No firewall was breached. From the system's perspective, the transaction was entirely legitimate. All traffic on the network looked good. All good on the wire, boss. What does this look like? Like I know I forgot which episode I was talking about. I was talking about like how does on both sides, right? Like because when it starts to be utilized effectively, operationally, right? When you start using it on both ends, right? And then you start simulating attacks, right? Red team, blue team attacks, right? So you start these tools as they start building upon each other. Now you're giving them actual data that goes against whatever it's trying to protect or attack, right? So like, what does that transform these models and what they're doing afterwards? Like, to what degree and how advanced do these things get into?
Man, so something that I think that I'm seeing more recently. So we started out the blue team side. You mostly had AI working through logs to help you clean those up, bring forth the, what they believe are the positive things to your seams or log management so you can actually look at it. But what I've seen more recently is they're doing more and more AI threat hunting. And my personal experience with it is mostly false positives. What I've seen versus like ticketing systems, because I don't work directly in a blue team for my normal day job. I do detection engineering as a part-time job, but yeah, I still think compared to the offensive side, we have so far to go on like the blue side to even compete at this point. I'm not even sure what that would look like, because I don't think that it's gonna be like a Mythos style workflow where you just create a fancy chain of prompts and it goes and breaks everything for you. I think that it's gonna be smaller specialized agents doing specific monitoring and tasks.
Michael?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I also think that we're seeing a couple of things at several layers. One layer is that I don't know how widely this was predicted, but somebody at some point early, like in Gen 1 cybersecurity, they predicted that there's so many permutations of code in these systems. And I'm talking about the Windows XP days. There's so many permutations in all the code, because I think operating systems had reached about 1 million lines of code around that time of Windows XP. And things have only become more complex since then. And with that complexity, no one can really trace down anything. No one can really master anything. And it's like, now do you have this AI that adds even more permutations, more combinations, right? Biological level mutation and evolution. What it really means is that teams are going to get overwhelmed. They're going to have tools and they're going to run tools, but they're never going to really catch up with the tail of where this stuff is. And, it might tempt some people to take another step back and say, can we reformulate the foundation so that, we don't have to deal with that? But that may remain theoretical. And in the meantime, businesses still got to run. They still going to want to make money. And what I'm saying there is that a lot of people may become resigned. They might be like, okay, because I remember I talked to this IT infrastructure guy a couple of years ago. I think it was like 3 years ago. And like, he's like a deep level 20 plus year Linux kernel infrastructure guy. And when I talked to guys like that 25 years ago, they'd be like, yeah, we're going to tighten down the security, the ACLs, we're going to tighten down the permissions. We're going to do all of this and we're going to keep everything secure. I talked to this dude 3 years ago. It was a whole different story. There's always going to be bugs. There's always going to be breaches. There's always going to be this kind of stuff. And it just floored me. It's like the resignation. And I see that resignation just running rampant in the meantime. But I'll close with this, though. I always saw these computers and stuff that we use, and I know this is not a popular thing to say, given our industry and everything, but I always saw them as unsecure devices. And so your real secrets would not be on these devices. Your real corporate secrets would not be on these devices if you can help it, right? Or make sure you have the best grade encryption for that stuff that you can and that you can monitor that. But everything else is pretty much up for grabs.
One other thing I can think of, I think Blue Team AI that's doing well, but I'm curious how well it's really doing, is your network firewall and like our routing and switching AIs that are monitoring traffic. So like your detection systems and your prevention systems, your IPS and IDS. I'm curious how well those are actually doing.
Well, I'm very optimistic about those intrusion detection systems and intrusion prevention systems. That's been a long established stack in network firewalls and network security. I spent a fair amount of time in that space, and what I can say is that there is an effort or an intent to try to upgrade that, so to speak. So what I mean by that is, right, not only have the AI capabilities there where you can see patterns and identify things more rigorously, right? Because you don't have vibe coders working on IPS and IDS, right? So you're going to have a much better methodology with that. But at the same time, we're seeing a shift in the Linux kernel, right? Where they're doing more with Rust in the Linux kernel. And I'm not one of those that say that Rust is like the Band-Aid for all things. In fact, I'm not really that big of a proponent on Rust. But to the extent that you have memory safety and you have other safeguards that you can put in place when you rewrite some of the network protocol stacks and some of those things, right, then you can at least have some level of foundation where intrusions can be assured, where you can be much more confident in that part of it.
So I'm curious about more is the like we have the deep packet inspection, DPI. There's
right
the fragmented buffer normalization, I believe is what it's called. But I'm curious with AI, the fragmentation techniques are going to get better. So I'm curious how they're actually going to stand up against like really well artifacted packets. Because if it can't reassemble them, what are you getting from that fragmented packet?
Right. So I think that, there's probably a little bit more optimism there with aggregating that into databases and taking those packets and being able to come up with correlations among different sets. You're going to bear a larger infrastructure cost for that, to be sure, in terms of the amount of information that you're going to have to maintain and that you're going to have to do compute. And I think that it's good when a company can have that type of practice in-house, but it's going to create a huge temptation to have that sensitive part of your protection regimen in the cloud through cloud providers who can handle the compute and handle the storage costs with that. But I think the fragmentation that you're mentioning, I think that is something that I think can be adequately addressed with where they're going with language models, especially those that are trained on the vast corpus of information that we've had with tools that can do reversing.
So, Intruder announces AI pen testing for web applications. Let me drop this in the chat. I did not see this, but I heard about this. This is from yesterday. Basically, Intruder leader in exposure management announced today, which is yesterday, their launch of AI pen testing for web apps, providing on-demand pen testing following initial release. Last quarter performed code base. So basically giving their code base over via GitHub or GitLab to automatically scope and launch penetration tests in minutes, with results in audit-ready reporting in hours. Mythos and Daybreak have proven that AI is extremely adept at finding security vulnerabilities. At the same time, AI is accelerating attacker capabilities. Annual pen tests do not offer organizations the same level of protection they once did, and are misaligned to the way businesses are shipping code today. Major deployments are happening weekly. Man, I feel like it's all the same thing, man. Like pushing something that we know is not at that point yet, but making it seem like it is, right? Because like, what is it really saying here? Like, what is it really presenting you? Something that, I mean, like a Nessa scan? It's not a pen test, man.
Well, these tools look really, really good the more that people are vibe coding and shipping bad code. So everything will find a million vulnerabilities for you, including, Microsoft's Defender for Endpoint.
You are exactly right. You're exactly right. I got it. I host my own website, right? And I run it behind Cloudflare. And Cloudflare sent me an email. And it said, hey, man, we discovered some vulnerabilities in your website. And I was thinking to myself, I got a largely static website. where are my vulnerabilities at, man? But it's like when you presented that article, it's like the thing that fired off my head was like Cloudflare. Intruder, that company better get the money while they can, because you're going to have companies like Cloudflare where all of us got our SSL certificates. We got all kinds of stuff linked up in Cloudflare, and they're just sitting there ready to sell us some more, cybersecurity services.
We're already ingrained. Just give us the extra business. We'll even give you a discount. Dude, it's actually funny you say that, because I got this same thing from them, and mine is entirely static. Mine is literally just an HTML and CSS page.
Don't you love that? Like, where is it going? What are you talking about? Yeah, I can't tell you how many like false positives, right? Like, so I think a large portion of it too is it's how easy. I shouldn't say how easy. How reliable, right? Is feedback or logs or results when you're testing something locally, right? Versus when you're testing something non-locally, right? Because like it's local, right? It's not behind a firewall, or it's on the opposite of a firewall if there is any firewall. But I mean, it's all internal, right? So like when you're doing other things, I mean, you're dealing with WAF, you're dealing with all different type of things where like you have to take those into account for, right? That can either give your location away, give your footprint away, or can just flag you altogether, right? And isolate you and kick you off the fucking wire. But I think like looking at this, what does it really come to, or what can we really make out of this when it comes to actually utilizing these and actually getting things done versus just the ongoing fluff that we hear? Lipstick on a pig every day.
So I think that the biggest issue right now with what we're seeing with like the discrepancy for all these specific offensive companies coming out. So most of your security vulnerabilities tie into just standard like engineering concepts, things of that nature. And it's errors in that you're exploiting, which is why Mythos is not a security AI, but it absolutely is destroying everything with really high positive feedback rates. I think these specifically trained security companies, until they get to competing with an actual frontier model, it's not going to matter. Because something like Mythos is, the amount of money and time to put into that pattern recognition, along with all of the like actual training that's been done behind it on vast knowledge bases, it's going to be hard to compete with that, even for somebody like Cloudflare.
Yeah, and I think you bring a good point there that a lot of people miss, right? Like that little nugget. I mean, if we want to put something in context and give something where individuals can really like absorb it and understand and retain it, think of it like this, right? How much more in detail results do you get when you use NotebookLM versus whatever you used before, right? Like it's so much more granular. It's so much. It changes everything. It changes how you see things, how you make connections, how the correlation process, like, and just your overall learning path, right? How you learn, right? And how fast you can learn, and how much better you can retain information. So I think like if you take it just in that perspective, right? It's the same thing with these models. How you're addressing is like, yes, they're trained on vast amounts of information. Of course, it's going to find like. These people are surprised about this. They're like, "Oh my God, it's so amazing." It's not. It's not really amazing. If I gave you 3 Harry Potter books and gave you 2 months and came back and was like, "Hey, who's Harry Potter?" and you couldn't tell me who Harry Potter was or is, that would be amazing. But this is not amazing, man. This just makes sense. If you understand what it is, if you understand the processes, if you understand what it's utilizing, how it's utilizing, it's simple. But for vast majority of individuals who are not in tech at all, or even really understand it, they can't comprehend that. So they just, oh shit, it's magic, right?
Well, it goes back to what Carl Sagan said, right? Carl Sagan said, any sufficiently advanced intelligent species that
Will be indistinguishable from magic.
that's correct. So, and I've been called a sorcerer more times in my life than not when it comes to computers. People are like, what is that voodoo you do? But the thing about this turn with the penetration testing and the automated penetration testing is it's going to have a couple impacts. Number one, the most obvious being, the most obvious being is that it's going to increase your model costs for those that do agentic coding and do it on loops, right? Because once you integrate in this automated penetration testing, then of course the model is going to have to follow those inputs, and that's going to result in more time and more tokens spent trying to reach a different level of quality. So that's going to be one impact. The second impact that's going to occur is that it's going to make engineers face a fork in the road, right? The previous state of affairs is that when you're writing applications, you're building applications, whether for an organization or even in your own little solo effort that has to face the public and have some level of quality and responsibility to it, you had the choice of how or to what extent you shored up cybersecurity defenses, right? But the thing that you're going to run into now is with this automated penetration testing, it's going to be everywhere. Like we were talking about earlier with Cloudflare. So you're trying to post a commit to GitHub. You're trying to post something to a server. And all of a sudden, what you have now is some agent in the background somewhere that's automatically testing your stuff and sending you an email and a bunch of other stuff. So you're going to get this information overload, and it might cause you to tune out. So whereas before you might have been a little more open to some cybersecurity analysis, you might go the other way.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that. But then again, you know me, I'm going to always play like devil advocate just so, because I might come across something that I didn't think of or I didn't know, right? So I'm going to play that devil's advocate. But like, think about this, right? Like, so if we step back right now, right, and we said one company can be the premier frontier model, right? What would that do? Like, as of tomorrow, what would be the first thing that would happen? Not like Occam's razor here. Occam razor here. Like,
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The same thing NVIDIA did with graphics card prices. They would be so expensive, nobody could afford to use them.
Right. And then on top of that, you lose so people think like, I hate when I hear like, oh, you know, competition's bad. Just stay in your own lane, do your own thing. Like, okay, whatever. Like if you're soft, do that. But competition automatically gives us the best, right? Us, the consumer, right? We're going to get the best of both worlds, right? Because we have 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever group of individuals that are competing and are going to bring the best product to the table when it's time to go to market. So like, we benefit when there's that running. When there's not that, when it's a single entity, you pay out the ass and you get shit product or service.
It drives innovation and makes pricing competitive.
It also depends on how they compete, because you had competition between Internet Explorer and Netscape Navigator, among other.
No competition.
Right? And so Microsoft they abused their position to push them out. The same way that they tried to abuse their position, you know, in terms of competition to try to push out what we would call, you know, more higher quality offerings, right? They didn't win in the end, right? But in terms of how they competed in the market, people thought they were getting the best with Microsoft for a while, right? So it's always in the details in terms of these contests.
Fair competition will never exist, though. So that's a difficult one right there.
Yeah, I don't. So I'm not looking for fair competition. I'm looking for competition, right? I don't think fair competition exists, right? Coming from a sport background, there's always the Bill Belichick.
Checking for
There's
doping.
there's always going to be that Bill Belichick, but you just might not really either make the connection or understand the connection, right? But there's always going to be an individual or individuals that are going to try to get the edge, right? Like, it's never going to just, I don't care how even you level the playing field, somebody's always going to try to, get home field advantage.
So our control for that, at least in the tech space, is quality, right? So what is our quality that we're looking for? And so that's the debate that's happening right now, not just with the cybersecurity scenario that you're presenting in terms of like a potential monopolist in that scenario, but also just having AI involved in general, right? Because that's what Linus Torvalds has been talking about here recently. I don't know if you're familiar with the controversy that happened this week with Linus Torvalds, the creator of Linux, and he's basically said, and this is his exact words: AI is here to stay, and AI is part of Linux kernel development, and you're either going to be part of that or you just walk away.
He's not wrong.
Yeah, I actually saw that. Where the fuck was that at? Ars Technica, I think I saw that at. But yeah, dude, I mean, one hell of a dude. I mean, anytime, it's kind of like, I can't say I really like the dude, or I don't dislike him, but I do, the CEO of NVIDIA. I don't really have an issue with him, but I mean, like, you still gotta like, or I don't say you still have to. I still like to hear what he says, right? And this is another individual who, like, if he says something, you want to listen, right? At least, I mean, you might not agree with it. You might take it with a grain of salt, but don't miss the message, right?
Yeah, I have enormous respect for Jensen Huang, the founder of NVIDIA. You know, he came from some very humble origins, worked on an assembly line. I think it was with Intel at some point or somebody like that, and just did his own graphics cards and built his own company. And look at him now, you know, and he makes great presentations in Taiwan on the stage. I love his presentations. They're just like, they're actually way above Steve Jobs, in my opinion. And so he really brings it. And so, yeah, and a lot of what he said has actually come true. And so even the controversial stuff that people disagree with, it has come true to a large extent.
Are we going to see a remake of that with the TENS torrent stuff? Where that gentleman left, I think it was AMD, and now he's making his own graphics cards.
You know, those are the stories I like, right? I call them like the the David and Goliath stories, right, so to speak. But the on the other side of that is like the stories that God, let me. I wonder if I can find that. There were two. I want to say, were they engineers? Apple engineers. They created. It was supposed to be like the new. It was like I forgot what it was called, but they created like these little fake. It's supposed to replace the phone altogether. What were these dudes? Were they at Apple? Apple engineer.
Oh, was it that thing called the human thing, or it was like a little pin that you put on?
Yes. A team of Apple employees want to replace smartphones. I think it's this one. Oh yeah, here it goes. Let me drop this in the chat. Yeah, it was a team of ex-Apple employees wants to replace smartphones with this AI projector.
Yeah,
Humane. Yeah.
Humane.
Yeah. That shit didn't work out.
Wait, was that the one that turned out to be a scam that CoffeeZilla fucking did a whole thing on?
On who did?
CoffeeZilla did a whole video on one of those AI replacements that turned out to be a scam.
Really?
Yeah, that was one of them, you know, and so a lot of people have panned that, but Yeah, I mean that is right up there, and I think OpenAI is trying to avoid a repeat of that because Johnny Ive is joined them, but I think the trial between Apple and OpenAI is going to be the trial of the year. Y'all heard about the
Oh yeah.
400? Yeah, the 400 engineers that brought technology over to Apple, and whew, I'm telling you, man.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, there'll never be a even playing field. There'll never be. Some referees getting paid off, some players getting paid to drop the ball or not to even look in the direction of the ball that's coming. A person is getting paid to fake a fight, like Tyson. Excuse me, sorry. But yeah, like there's always going to be individuals or a group of individuals who's not playing, by the rules or bending the rules. I mean, that's just what it is. But
Yeah, when the stakes are higher, they're high enough. I mean, we can see examples of fair competition in our lives, but if the stakes are high enough, then yeah, you have a huge temptation, a huge incentive to try to throw things your way, you know. And so yeah, that's definitely there. And I think people, have to use their best judgment on that because sometimes those that actually win unfairly are not always wrong, right? And so, when you're talking about your scenario from earlier with the great monopoly cybersecurity firm, I think, that's going to be a case where, for all the ways that they may have gotten to the top, they might be beneficial overall. And so I think the question is going to be, what is going to be the real benefit of having something at that level and at that scale?
I have the real question for you guys. So over like the last couple months, we've seen the first quantum computing AIs running hybrid models. And apparently like the memory gap is ridiculously, it's a tiny required amount of memory. And the accuracy is insanely high. When is that going to be weaponized?
Well, Jesse, how do we know that hasn't already been weaponized?
When will we detect that that's been weaponized?
when you start using AI on the blue side.
So you have to have quantum AI.
Yeah.
By the time blue team has a Mythos level AI, red team's been like quantum for 10 years.
Exactly.
I honestly believe like there's stuff like that already happening. I think what's going to happen is some company is going to like really like say, hey, we should start implementing this on the blue side, right? And somebody's just going to figure, like somebody's going to do a great job. It's going to probably be some old school threat hunter or some crazy shit.
I still think it'll be a bunch of tiny models. I don't think it'll be one big model like a Mythos thing.
No, I don't even think it's going to be like that. I think it's going to be a core group of really good type, like, I don't know, like threat hunters or something, right? Like, or even like digital forensic people, right? That will get together and create something from their body of understanding of knowledge, right? Like, because I think the biggest thing is you can give it all this documentation, right? So it understands, it has the knowledge, but the actual logic gap, that's what it doesn't have, right? We can see something when we're attacking something as an attacker and be like, oh man, I could daisy chain this shit and then get this, and then get remote code execution. Now, what does that look like from the AI's perspective, right? Is it actually doing that, or do we have a bunch of false positives, right? Like, exactly, and that logic is not there. You can say, oh yeah, it has logic, but it's not the logic that we're referring to, right? It can't look at a scenario and be like, let me do it like this.
But see, theoretically, especially if you get into a really good computational model, maybe tie in some reinforcement learning, it could simulate the outcomes. and then pick the outcome that would best serve the end goal.
But see, that's not like what I mean, like actual logic, right? Like
I mean, that is logic, because you'd have to have weights to determine what the end goal and which one would serve that better. And that's where reinforcement learning comes in.
But in doing so, aren't you so you're playing out multiple different scenarios when doing that, right? And it's basically picking the best scenario with the highest probability based off the weight, right?
Yes, it is doing that based off of the weight. So here's where it actually works, right? So we got to separate the conversation at this particular point into, you got the frontier models and the general models that have a large corpus of data that includes like social media, popular culture, all this kind of stuff mixed in with like the training set for like cybersecurity, software development, IT and networking. That's one side. You take a model and you start to give it enough so that it understands human cognition in terms of what writing looks like, what words look like, but it's much more biased towards the mathematical algorithms for logic, right? Because you can write a math formula, a very intricate one that takes up an entire book that's like 600 pages, and it describes logic in a way that's useful, that's practical, right? It's not the full scope of logic that a human would have. But then this piggybacks to something that Jesse was talking about smaller AI with the quantum bits. See, the human brain runs on approximately 5 watts of energy, from what I understand. Is that correct, Jesse? Okay, small human brain, and it can think of all kinds of things that these LLMs cannot think of, right? So if you have a small enough model with the quantum capabilities of superposition, where it can look at different simultaneous contexts, right, in a way that can fit in a smaller box, then it can do things that what are today larger models cannot do, including things that we would call impossible.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of the math behind it, because currently we're running off of vectors, which is, like nth dimensions on your vector, but most of the models run off of a flat mathematical plane and then a generated shape at the end of it, where you're creating your dimensions. When we look at quantum computing, you can start running multiple of those in parallel, because you're not just stuck to your standardized bits. You have your infinite bits or qubits. So the concept behind quantum AI is, I can't wrap my head around it. It's so fascinating.
The inkling of that this will actually work goes back to 2025 when Anthropic built the compiler, right? They said AI can't build a compiler. Only humans can build that. Now, granted, it did have a training set of how people built compilers over the last 30 years. That's fine. What did they spend? What was it? 20 hours or 40 hours? It was a lot of hours, right? And a lot of tokens, a lot of money. Here's the thing. What they had to do, keep looping to do all of that. What Jesse is talking about is the parallelism, where all of that looping can happen simultaneously. You can go down multiple different paths. The LLMs that we're using now can't do that. And I had this conversation with Google Gemini yesterday, actually. I had to go into the weeds of all of that, temperature, K values, P values, all of that, because I wanted to refine my understanding of temperature values and all that kind of stuff. So it's all about truncation, right? And so that's why we get a lot of bad answers, because the AI has to give us an answer within a set period of time when we're using chat-based AI. When you're using the agents, you can get it to loop and loop and loop, but still there's going to be a truncated space in order to get that computation done within a set amount of time. With quantum, that changes, because now you can go into an almost unbounded space, as it were, or it will at least appear that way to us, where you can actually resolve the actual, the converged true right answer in a smaller amount of time. And that's going to have a huge impact on cybersecurity if we don't change our systems by then.
So like at that point, would the logic become, would it be like assimilate or simulate?
No, it's going to be logic that is based off of the ideal model of what
it was
a
trained off of.
what a scientific person's version of logic is, not a philosopher.
Okay, I got you.
So your PhD physicist, your PhD
STEM program,
yeah,
physicist. Yeah, I got you.
but it may be good enough.
So, just to put it into perspective, AES 256, allegedly it would take a supercomputer like 5 million years to break that. They've done tests with quantum computing, and it took less than 6 months to brute force AES 256, just to show you like the computational difference.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I just like, as I get more into it and I see how AI operates and how it's like put together, and a lot of these things where like oh shit, it's getting better, it's starting to understand, but I really want to differentiate it being able to think and it going through these iterations and these loops and understanding just or it presenting data as if it's understanding, right? Like there is a big difference, and I just don't want to like blur that line because it took me a while to really comprehend that, right? But yeah, what moving on to the quantum side of things, like who knows what that's going to be like, man? Like, yeah, I mean, it's going to break everything, and I think actually, Mike, you might have brought this up, but you were saying we are still bound to a 1980s, 1970s style of architecture, of hardware, of everything, right? Like it's getting more advanced, but it still falls under that same. How would you like? It's just hiding under more levels of abstraction, right?
That's correct. And AMD and Intel, there are in talks because they license each other's instruction sets, right? Everybody think it came from Intel. That's true up to a certain point, and then AMD created or invented what you call x86-64. So the ability to run 32-bit on a 64-bit processor. Intel's research was to do just all 64-bit. That was Itanium, Intel Itanium. That failed in the market. So in order to keep relevance in the market, they licensed x86-64 from AMD. And so they work together on the processor technologies for compatibility's sake. But they are talking about changing the way processors work. And they're looking at trying to make the process more efficient so you have fewer steps in that. But the thing of it is that if you see, I was studying quantum computing and quantum science back in 2004, right? Because it's just exciting to me, interesting to me. But the thing is, we haven't really seen any real products, from that, right? And so I've been waiting a long, long time for it, right? And the really smart people that I talk to, they tell me that I shouldn't hold my breath, right? But we'll see. So I'm still optimistic that it's going to come out here and do some things. But yeah, we got to change the computers, man. They got to fundamentally change. And here's the thing: even though we know that they have to change, it will be remarkable to you that if you actually study quantum computing, quantum theory, if you study it as a cybersecurity person, software engineer, IT person, I guarantee you knowledge of that opens your mind in a way where you can navigate and manage these systems in profound ways.
Jesse?
Yeah, I've wanted a quantum computer for, I think when I saw the first one allegedly going public was like 2022. But everyone since then has turned into educational purposes only. So you have to be a educational like entity such as a college or something of that nature. And I've not found one affordable outside of that. That's not like $50,000. But I want to get into quantum programming because I think in the security space, that's probably going to be the future. I just think that like Michael's mentioned previously, we are using an archaic structure, and we're eventually going to get to a level where we can't get any more compute power out of that. It's going to bottleneck at some point.
Because we can only get the transistors down to so many nanometers. And it's just been amazing that we're on the cusp of 2 nanometers. And so the smaller you make the transistors, the more you can pack within a surface area, which allows you to get more computation, right? That's how we've been doing the multi-cores and all of that. The thing about, because Jesse and I had talked about this at length, is that, and this is just a summary version of it, HP tried to come out with what's called HP the machine. It was very widely advertised, HP the machine. It was going to be their attempt to bring quantum computing to the masses. And they said they was going to help rewrite the Linux kernel and all of this kind of stuff. And like Jesse was saying, they was going to make APIs available to software developers so you could do quantum programming, but not do it at the level of math, but at the level of API and ease of use, like we have with everything else. But it was too ambitious. There was too much going on, and that project cratered. The real quantum computers, IBM has them, Google has them, right? And IBM has been doing quantum research for over 30 years. The problem is just miniaturization. But like y'all all know from history, we eventually solved the miniaturization problem, and before you know it, you got it out there.
I got an idea. Why don't we just DIY a quantum computer like a 1 qubit? I think we could figure it out.
So are you going to do the math?
I don't care to do math. I like math. I'm good at math.
As long as you're going to do the
math. That's why I
math.
like neural networks.
Yeah, as long as you can do the math, man. Yeah.
Dude, that is one of my favorite things is I did programming growing up after like the initial thing that got me into it was gaming, is actually algorithms and the implementation of them. Absolutely love the concept and the math behind it than programming.
All right, so I got to bring it up. Who's getting the Apple phone or Ultra or whatever it's called? No takers.
Well, I would try it if it's not my main phone.
Man, that's a pretty hefty sidearm.
I know that's right, but it would be interesting to have that just to play around with and see if there's any practical utility to it. The problem with those phones have been just the bend in the middle of the screen, and the defect rate on that has been traditionally has been quite high. But y'all ever seen this Mars movie, Mission to Mars with Val Kilmer?
Probably. It's an old movie.
Man, tell you what, they had some concepts in there. Remember that little that fold computer that they had, Jesse, when they was on the surface of Mars, and they had the rover that was out somewhere, and it was flying around and sending them back telemetry through the satellite where they could look at for the surface of Mars and all that. I thought that computer was it was like this little cylinder, and you could just unfold it like a scroll, like an Egyptian scroll, and it was just the most bang out awesome thing I'd ever seen.
Wait, is it this one right here? I saw this movie. I don't know if it's the same one.
Dude, I feel like if I was gonna get the Apple Fold, I would just do Huawei instead.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. What'd you say, Jesse?
If I was gonna do like the Apple folding phone, I would just do Huawei instead. A company that's been practicing it for so long that it's gonna be okay.
Woo, that Huawei stuff is outstanding, man. Golly.
I mean, I got the Oppo, and I mean, it's a great phone. I just I've been trying to get rid of the Apple for so long, man. But I still I don't know. It's hard. Old habits die hard, but eventually you got to die. But my biggest complaint was, hey, man, they don't switch it up. It's the same shit. How long did it take for them to get 12 gigs of RAM? I had 16 plus some extra on what was the one before, the One Plus.
See, the one thing you have to remember about companies like Huawei too is they're creating this equipment on internal components that are generations old because of trade restrictions with China. I think that's why they've come so far with AI specifically, is because they had to train efficiency more so than just throwing more hardware at it. Man, you guys got me freaking thinking of a new YouTube series now. DIY quantum computing and then building AI and quantum programming.
Yeah, man, you should do it.
So I was looking out there, Jesse, and I asked Gemini about that, and there's a few options out there to get started with a DIY quantum computer. There's a add-on kit for Raspberry Pi that's like $100, and then you got this thing called the SpinQ desktop quantum computer that you can mess with, and then there's this thing called the Raspberry.
So the SpinQ one's the one that's now educational only. Their entry level's $5,000, and it's only like 2 qubits. But you have to be a licensed educational area to actually order it, because that was one of the first companies that actually come out public.
And speaking of IBM, it apparently this Raspberry uses IBM's Qiskit, Qiskit, an open source quantum programming framework. So they got some stuff floating out there, and it's open source. And so I guess they want somebody to crack this and make something of it.
Oh man.
Dude, that looks wild.
What is that?
The Raspberry. See, I was just thinking of setting up a 1 qubit and a hydrogen base.
Nice.
I was gonna ghetto it up. This is good.
Oh man, why is this? I just saw something about what? Elon Musk, SpaceX, and talks to supply Pentagon with computing power. Not even seen it.
And that's cool as long as you don't mess with my Social Security.
Oh, you're not lying. Yeah, it's crazy. Okay.
Michael, do you know anything about quantum programming?
Well, I've read on the theories long enough and thought about them long enough that my mind automatically thinks that way. So yeah, we could make that work.
It's about to say, because I know very little about photonic systems.
Well, yeah, photonic systems, they are what I would have called a evolutionary precursor to that. Yeah, Intel had this project, I think it was called Lightspeed. Yeah, Intel Lightspeed. But yeah, so it just really comes down to materials. But the real challenge with quantum as a widespread device is just the temperature, controlling for temperature, and as well as ambient radiation, because you got to keep the qubits, stable. So that's going to be some of the challenge there.
Oh yeah.
That part I'm not actually worried about, because most of that's preventing outside magnetic interference. I have Faraday bags out the wazoo here, so just set up a Faraday cage, good to go.
Nice. All right, before we close up, as always, so we got three locations. if it to travel, would you rather be on an island somewhere with your favorite choice of beverage, in the mountains somewhere, preferably where it rains, or just whatever, in some random look? It doesn't matter. You can pick something outside of that. What would it be?
Sacramento, California.
Wait, hold on. Why Sacramento?
We got Wi-Fi, we got food, we got like all the nice, trappings of civilization, but you also have nice weather. You got, generally good people. Yeah.
Sacramento? We're talking about the same place, Sacktown?
Well, somewhere in California.
Okay. All right. Cool. Sacramento. I don't know about Sacramento, man, but I'll take it. So, Jesse, what about you?
New Zealand, because I can see every climate known to man in like 3 miles.
Nice. Mine will probably be Croatia, Zagreb. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but whatever the capital is out that way, that would be out there. It has the Mediterranean. I think there's like 6 places that have the Mediterranean climate. And Croatia is one of them. California is one of them, or LA areas, I guess, is one of them. And there's some other, I think like Spain or some shit, but who the fuck wants to live in Spain? I'm just playing. But yeah, so Croatia. Other than that, we are done. We're past 1 minute. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week.